Bienvenidos una vez más Invertir como Profesional Draco TV. Hoy os traemos una nueva entrevista en este ciclo de entrevistas a CEOs. Ya sabéis, hasta ahora hemos traído pues entre 4 o 5 CEOs donde entrevistamos para que conozcáis mejor pues, las compañías que pueden ser interesantes. En esta ocasión traemos a Manas Floria, que ya lo veo conectado. Como siempre, esta iniciativa desde Invertir como Profesional Draco TV es porque soy conocedor de que el inversor particular no tiene acceso a los CEOs. Por tanto, desde este canal os traemos a los CEOs para que podáis preguntar directamente a través del chat, a través de Twitter. Tengo muchas preguntas esta vez para trasladar. Por tanto, la idea es que os conectéis y podáis preguntar directamente, pues en este caso a Manas, pero también las otras veces como hemos hecho pues con Patrick de Sousa, como hemos hecho pues con Vlad Sublov, Eric Stenford, todo este tipo de CEOs. Por tanto, ya veo conectado Manas, vamos a darle paso y la idea es que en esta ocasión pues vosotros participéis más aportando preguntas, lo podéis hacer a través del chat, tengo muchas preguntas de Twitter, por tanto es una entrevista para todos vosotros, por tanto espero que la disfrutéis. Dejarme decir antes, como siempre, Invertir como Profesional Draco TV no ofrece ningún servicio de inversión o servicio auxiliar, tampoco ofrece ningún tipo de asesoramiento financiero o de inversión personalizado, y cualquier opinión aquí expresada por el formador, por mí, es siempre con carácter totalmente educativo y nunca se debe interpretar como una confirmación para comprar o para vender valores. Dicho esto, vamos a dar paso a Manas. Manas, hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening. I'm really glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, good evening or good night, because here in India it's 7 p.m. or what time is it right now?
It's 7 p.m. It's 7 p.m. It is still evening for us.
Okay. Thank you for taking my invitation to come here. So in this channel, as I know that is it difficult for private investors, well, I think it's impossible to talk with CEOs. And 1 year ago, I decided to try to make interviews to the CEOs that I could be interested for my fan or because I think the idea could be interesting to take the CEO to the channel, as this is a way that the private investor can ask you directly with questions with the chat, or also in Twitter with the followers. So I think this is my initiative for approach the CEOs to the people here in Spain and especially in Latin America, because there are people from Latin America that is following the channel. I have many questions for you, Mana, so you cannot imagine how many questions I have from Twitter, and then people is going to connect and they can ask by the chat. If you read below the screen a Spanish question, don't worry, I'm going to translate any questions. I know that you are not going to talk about data questions that is not going in your press release. Don't worry about that. If you don't want to ask any questions, feel free not to ask. But my idea for today is I like to start with you, maybe not more than 20 minutes, to talk about some small introduction. And then I have some questions about your competitive advantage and some financials. And then I want to go with the followers that they ask you directly, and I think this is the main part of the interview. So let me show your disclaimer, okay, just for a moment, and we can start with some introduction later than that. So I have seen many people connected right now. So okay, let's go starting. So Manas Floria is the co-founder of Nagarro and have served as a custodian of entrepreneurship in the organization since 2015. From 2013 to 2020, Manas was the server as a member of management board of Algelier, and also has an academic background in technology and operations management with a master's degree from Stanford University. So these last weeks, I was reading too many interviews about your person, Manas, and about your business. And I like one from Tyler Gallagher. I think maybe you remember. And in the first of the interview, when Tyler is starting the interview, they talk about your backstory, and you told that you are living in Iraq for 6 years. So I'm so surprised about that. So if you can explain a little bit this part of your life, and then you told that the most interesting story that you meet is when you meet your partners, your friend Vikas and your brother Bikram, and you meet in the balcony smoking a cigarette, and then you decide to merge both business. So if you can start talking about that.
Yeah, sure, sure. I've been lucky that my father worked in petroleum geology, and he grew up in a small town, in a village actually in India. And he got a scholarship to study petroleum geology at Moscow University. So he studied it in Russia, and he did his PhD there. And then after coming back, he was working in India, and then he also got a chance to go to the Middle East and be a consultant to the Iraqi National Oil Company, and then a university there. So I grew up 3 years in Baghdad and 3 years in Kurdish Iraq, in Suleimania and Erbil. So it's just very nice to have some other places that you can call home. And anyway, lived in many parts of India. And the story that you tell about the founding of Nagaro, our stream of Nagaro, is relatively later. It's after Stanford even. So at Stanford, you got to meet all these cool people from all over the world, and they were all into technology, and everyone wanted to do something new. This was 1990s, and we ended up making some software for a Belgian company, Janssen Pharmaceutica, in fact. And that was what made me start my own small little company with a couple of people. And Vikas and Vikram had another company with 7, 8 people, so much bigger than us. And we got some work that we were doing together. And one day Vikas says, do you want to step out for a cigarette? And I don't normally smoke, but I went out, and once in a while I don't inhale.
Well, you said 1.25, right? I don't know if is it true or not, but
What is that? Sorry.
you said 1.25. Is it right?
Yeah, something like that. And I don't inhale. My lungs get all inflamed. Anyway, but stepped out, and we decided in that 20 minutes we were outside that we should really do this together, because we had some networks in Europe. They had built 8, 10 people, and I think it was the best decision we ever made. And this was back in '96, so long, long time ago. I have since then not been with the company all through. I was supporting from the outside for a long time. Came in part time from 2006 and full time from 2011 or so. So that's the story. As part of the deal with Algair, when we sold the company to Algair in 2011, I part of the deal was that I would come full time, and I came full time.
Okay, so great story, great introduction. So last week we was talking with a IT senior professional, because when we try to research a company, uh, most of the time I'm not especially in that kind of business or sector. So because most of them has a circle of competence, so we need to talk with someone that could understand very well the company. So we talked with a IT professional, and the questions related to where is the source of competitive advantage in this business. I listened to you that for you the best competitive advantage of Nagarro is to attract the right talent. So let me start with the business culture, because I think that business culture is the center of your company, and I think is the main competitive advantage. So could you talk about how you think about the business culture, and then we can go develop different things about business culture?
Yeah, I think a great part about important part for aspect of all great companies is that they should be designed for what they are trying to achieve, right? So if in McDonald's, at the McDonald's company, they're trying to achieve a certain standardization, they're trying to achieve a certain quick turnaround, they're trying to achieve whatever they're trying to achieve, low price, then they should be designed for that. The organization, the culture, everything should be designed for that. So what we as Nagaro are trying to achieve is great engineering in small decentralized teams, right? So two pizza teams, we sometimes say that, and the culture has to be uh, really designed for that. And that's a culture of autonomy where the small team feels that it can control its destiny. It's not being told what to do. That's one aspect of it. Very entrepreneurial uh, people who know how to handle responsibility and know how to get things done. The other side of the culture is collaboration, because almost no topic that you have today is a pure single topic, right? If you're making a motorcycle renting thing for BMW, it may have cloud topics, it may have mobile topics, it may have automotive, it may have banking, it may have insurance, it may have. So, how do you bring all of these together is something which requires a type of collaboration. And how do you build that informal, non hierarchical, global culture? Because you have to have people from all over connecting and working together. I think we have done a reasonably good job in that, in achieving that.
Okay, so I think that the main reason for to create a business culture is to decrease the attrition rates. So I was reading that in India, the average attrition rates is at 25%. So if you read about the leaders, Infosys and TCS and Tata, they have high attrition rates. So I'm trying to understand why Nagarro has a 13, 14 attrition rate, which more or less the same than your competitors in the US and Europe. But so I suppose that if you attract talent from tier two, tier three cities, I think with this kind of people, you reach lower attrition. So can you develop about why to have this lower rates?
Yeah. So, two or three points, right? So, one is that the fundamental reason for the culture is not for lower attrition, but it's more to be able to succeed in a particular type of project, right? Which is fast moving, intense, small projects, right? But a spin off effect is that attrition can also be low because people like this culture. Young people want to have responsibility, they want to have a more fluid, collaborative culture, they want more global exposure, they want to work in a small team so that they get a better chance to learn. Because if you're part of a large project being shifted from one technology to another, then you don't get that much of a chance to learn. So young people like that, and I think that's the primary reason. But being the experience of the customer, but the experience of the employee or colleague also flows from that. So our attrition is not. I mean, our normal attrition we say is 12 to 15%. In the last year and a half, it's been higher. It's been up at in the high teens, but now it's more or less reverting back to normal attrition rates. So now this is uh, for the last 20 to 25 years. I'm not talking of today. So the tier 2, tier 3 town strategy is relatively new. I mean, earlier we were mostly around the Delhi region. In fact, it's the most expensive region in the country. The town that where our biggest offices uh, is in is the most expensive town in the country, and town called Gurgaon, which is south of Delhi, right? But we have since then, since COVID, gone to hire people all over the country. Some of the people actually left to smaller towns, and we also reached out to hire them wherever they were. So I think the attrition in our small towns and in our big towns is not very different. It's not very different. Um, I think the reason we reach out to small towns is because we want to catch the talent that is strong enough in what it's doing that it doesn't need to be in a place it doesn't want to be in. If they want to live in a small town, either to have a better quality of life, or to be able to go hiking in the mountains, or to be able to be at the seaside, or to be with family, with their parents or whatever, that's what we would like to tap these people for. So yeah, these are somewhat related, but not totally 100% correlated.
Is it reasonable to think that Infosys, Tata, and these kind of companies, they are hitting in the big cities, and this is the difference from your company? So is it reasonable to think like that?
To be honest, Kim, I don't really track what Infosys and TCS, etc., are doing. I don't think it's very relevant for us. Uh, I'm not really tracking their strategy. I mean, these are huge companies. They're much larger. They're very different. even among them, they are very different from each other, and they're at a different scale. I mean, so I do know that all of them, including Accenture, uh, are opening more and more offices now than they used to. So I think there is a bit of a change also in the way the geographical dispersion, especially in India, is being looked at. But the same is true in Romania. The same is true in Germany. The same is true in more and more countries in the world. Yeah.
And in terms of the age of the employees, there are a difference from other companies, or more or less it's the same. So because you talk about young people, but I think it's the same than the other companies, right?
Yes, I think I would guess it's the same. I don't really know, Graham. I don't really know, but I would guess it's similar in terms of age. But
Okay.
in terms of experience, I think perhaps we are probably have more. See, we don't run a typical pyramid type of management of people, etc. I mean, there's a lot of talk in IT services about how you have uh, the design for scale for large projects is you have a few top people, then you have a lot of younger people and less experience and so on. As I said, our model is not of those projects. Our model is of small, intensive projects. And of course, you would like to have a mix of different, skill levels and all that. But you do want everyone to be very, very good because that small project maybe very, very critical for BMW or for Lufthansa or for whoever, right? So that's the slightly different kind of work in general that we are doing, I think.
Also, I read that you like to search to hire in secondary schools, right? So not in the main schools.
Yeah, so India has a very big problem, right? So we have uh, very few elite universities, and everyone tries to get into these, 5 7 universities, and these are people who come out of there. They all get like lots of offers at huge salary levels, but they have just a few thousand people, so a very small set of people, and you can hire those people also, but we find that, and I'm from one of those schools, so it's unfair to say this, but you find that somehow you're better off hiring really strong people from the next level of schools, right? Because they are they have maybe not gotten through that big competitive examination when they were 17 years old, but they have worked very hard for the next 4 years. So it's much better to hire the topper of the next level of school than the last person in the in the very, very top school. So it's very Indian sort of local thing, which yeah, somehow we try to watch out for.
This idea to hire in tier cities, in 2-tier cities, 3-tier cities in secondary schools, is it relation with the Hive network, right? So you create some local networks in these small cities, and I think this is really good for the business. So could you develop a little bit that?
Yeah, so a lot of people say that you need to be together to do a good job. You need to be in the office. You need to be meeting more often, and so on. I think that what COVID showed us was if you cannot be in the office, if you cannot meet, then what do you do, right? And then if you embrace that and use that as a possibility of innovation and creative thinking, then you think of all the 20 things you can do to substitute for that, right? And this idea actually has been in our minds even before COVID because we wanted to be a global company. We wanted to be a company that it did not matter that some people were in India and some people were in Portugal or some people were in wherever, right? And uh, we in fact acquired a company that had about 40 people in 12 countries. I remember there were some folks in Portugal. I remember from that acquisition, but also Serbia, Colombia, India, everywhere, right? And they were totally virtual. They had never met each other, but they were working for great companies, for SanDisk. They were working for Twitter. They were working for a lot of different companies. So we have tried to uh, use the opportunity of COVID and try to build out, what does belonging mean? What does experience mean? So how do you connect people of the same project? How do you connect people of the same location? How do you connect and different uh, dimensions. People of the same region. You may want to connect people to the project once every couple of months. In the local region, every month. In the region, so in the local town, maybe every monthly, couple of times a month. In the region, maybe once every 6 months. Whatever the cadences are, right? And the hive idea, where we have now a couple of dozen hives, is basically that we want to give people the total flexibility. If they want to really work from home, they want to come into the office, they want to have friends locally that are all Nagaro, and so on and so forth, right? So we have invested a lot of time in this. The other thing that we have invested in is digital experiences. So this is the real world connections, but equally we have had to invest in digital experiences. So every single day there is some event or meetup or other, sometimes even two or three every day, which are all carefully designed to get the right amount of cultural alignment, the right amount of education and learning, uh, and so on. So a lot of effort has gone into this embracing of this work from anywhere concept.
Okay, is it clear that this centralized and flat structure has a lot good things? But my question here is, which one are the risks to this kind of structure? Because any structure have some risk. In your opinion, Manas, which one could be the risk?
Yeah, so I think the risk is the same. I think as with uh, so do you mean decentralized or geographically dislocated?
From not from business structure from your company
Business
that all the people is
structure.
remote, is in different locations, so you don't meet with them. So
Okay, okay. So I will answer this in two parts because one is that we are decentralized as a company, so our organizational structure also is decentralized, right? And then the second is geographically we are decentralized, right? I will address both, right? So in the decentralized uh, organizational design, I think two or three things are very important. Everyone must have data to show where they stand, where the company stands, and they must have alignment. So we try to do it with ownership. So people are aligned more with the success of the company in the long run than of their little piece of the company, right? So that's one part. Right? And because the risk there is that everyone just starts to look at only at their own piece and not collaborate and not work together, and the decentralization becomes chaos and all that, right? But it's a relatively easy problem to solve. If you look at the geographical dispersion, there are challenges at two levels, right? So there's a challenge at the very very local level, and then I think there's a challenge at the country level. The challenge at the very very local level is that is a feeling of belonging. You need to have a feeling of belonging with where you work, and so you need to be somehow through all these different efforts getting that feeling, online, digital channels, physical channels, and you need to be uh, not without being pushed to the office. You need to get the feeling of belonging. That's one risk or something to work on. And the second, at a country level, always is that uh, even today, after so many decades of the United Nations and all that, we still think in a country level, a country mindset, unfortunately. And so it's very easy if you don't put the right global culture in that people are still thinking, oh, I'm Indian, you're Chinese, and you're Spanish, and you're Portuguese, and you're French, and so on. And that is not the way a global company can run. So I think that the last 5 years we have spent a lot of effort in bringing people even from acquired companies onto this sort of global platform. So I think that's the risk. But again, it's a risk which we have, I think, overcome. And unless and until we totally, start to go backwards, I don't see that being a realistic risk for us.
okay. Do you have some target in terms of which percentage of my employees should to be in India? Because with your with your last M&A acquisitions, you are hiring in the US and you are taking teams from the US. I think you are growing in Europe and US. So do you say that I want 80% of my employees in India? So do you have some target like this?
Not at all. Not at all. I think we are just trying to find great talent wherever we can. And very often it is in India. And very often the acquisitions we do have Indian teams. but we also had like Ripe Concepts with 600 fantastic people in Philippines, and we love to be global. We love the meeting people who are different from us in some ways, but always very similar somewhere else in some deeper at some deeper level. So no, we have no targets at all. We are we would like to grow in every region, and in fact would like to keep expanding even our service regions to add more countries to the mix if possible.
Okay, there are a recurrent answer for your company, and the question is, okay, you have 70-80% of employees in the India, so where the cost employees is lower. So is it reasonable to think that as you have a cheapest employee cost, you can reduce the billable rate, so you can sign projects and contract with a low price? Is it reasonable to think like that?
See, um, let me see if I can answer this in a way that would make sense, right? So let's say you have to uh, get an architect to design your next home, right? And it's not a big part of the cost. It's a small part of the cost of the home. Yeah? Now, how do you pick an architect? So it's exactly the same when someone picks us because the solution that we are building for them may be 500K, 1 million, 2 million. But normally for them, it's a strategic thing in their business. I mean, it's a whole new line of business, it's a whole new concept or whatever it is, right? But high leverage. So the way that people would decide on that is they would first look to see, do I have confidence that the architect or this vendor in this case will do a great job in time, take care of everything? Have they had experiences like I need in my country, in my region, in my vertical, in my solution? So without that, no one will ever talk to you. And remember here, we are competing not with three, four, five other companies. We're competing with hundreds of other vendors, right? So we have to show that we are clearly a level above. Now, once the client decides that, yes, we like this company, we would like to work with this company among all the other companies out there, then it comes to price because it goes to procurement. And typically, procurement is a separate function which is mainly around price and payment terms and so on. And procurement will then say, "Oh, you are from India, so uh, you can service this cheaper, or you're servicing this from Romania, so we will take this price, or we're servicing it from Poland, we'll take this price, whatever the thing is, right? So, or Mexico, or Philippines, or China, or wherever, right? So uh, price does come into play, but I would say that mostly it is like the last leg of the whole process. You have to be competitive, of course, but I don't think that we rely on being out of India for winning deals. And in fact, I think that some of the metrics that people keep asking us about, revenue per employee and things like that, would be a lot higher if we were in more expensive countries. But anyway, but that's kind of the way it works in most cases.
So my question is related to if with this strategy I can take more revenue growth, right? So this is the idea, no? Okay, so more competitive advantage in this business could be partnership with company software because you are using this software to personalize and install it on something. So gaining a scale, is it important in this business? So I understand that your company reached many agreements with company softwares, but can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I mean, so we do work with a lot of software product companies and the cloud service providers. We work a lot with Google and Amazon and Microsoft. We work with Adobe. We work with SAP and their Hybris and just many different Salesforce in a big way. And I think we have very fruitful relationships with all these companies and also many other niche, more specialized companies than the list I just mentioned. And there are economies of scale here because once you are large enough and you have a global reach and you are at Fortune 500 clients, then even the biggest cloud service providers, for example, they also are eager to see what kind of solutions you have built, what can they take to their customers, and so on. So yes, it does help in scaling. I think in general, I've been an entrepreneur very often in very very small companies, and I think that it's a bit unfair because as you get larger, everything goes your way, right? I mean, there is no negative to being larger.
Mm.
Almost, when you're small, even one client has a problem, one top engineer has a problem, it can sink you, right? But when you are large, you have this, everything works for you. So it's a bit unfair, I think. But yeah, it does help. It definitely does help.
Okay, there are other recurrent question, which I know that you are not disclosing which percentage of your revenue is maintenance revenue, but as today, most of this maintenance revenue is in the hands of software companies, but there are some IT companies that have maintenance revenue. What can say here that you can share with us? So is the company working to reach an interesting percentage of maintenance? So what can you say here?
So we don't lead with maintenance, right? I mean, we do have a lot of great clients with systems that we maintain, but you would not necessarily pick Nagaro to just run uh, traditional maintenance because that's not where we distinguish ourselves. We are the agile, fast moving, digital, challenging people. The more complex, the better. The more involved and multifunctional, multi stakeholder, complex fields, right? So that's kind of where we distinguish ourselves. So yes, we do have some maintenance revenue, but it's much lower than that of some of our uh, other IT services companies. I won't say peer group because peer group also has low maintenance revenues, but a lot of the larger companies have a lot more than we do, I think. And it's not really, I mean, we have a business unit which is focused on this, and they are out to try to do as much as they can. But of course, they are aware also that the brand of Nagaro is actually coming from our other work.
Okay, okay. I'm going to spend 10 minutes more at maximum with you, and then I go with questions from the people, right? So
Sure.
I like to talk about verticals. So do you have some preference to grow in any vertical because you think there are much growth, they have much more operating margin? This is more anti-cyclical. So about your verticals, who is really diversified, what do you expect for the future?
Yeah. So you notice, Kim, that we are very diversified, and it's a very deliberate strategy because uh, when we were very small, then it was more of an accident. But when we became big enough to be able to choose, we decided very deliberately that we wanted to be diversified, and which was a good thing because if we had to pick a vertical at that time, we would have picked aviation, and then we would have been shut down in 2020 because there was no aviation work. All travel was closed. But yeah, so we diversified also because the technologies that are being used in different industries are more and more the same. The experiences that consumers, that you and I are looking for in more and more industries are more or less the same. uh, I mean, we want the same experience from a retail website or a healthcare website or a automotive website and so on. And there is a lot of blurring of the boundaries between verticals. So you could talk travel, but travel is very close to entertainment. Travel is very close to insurance. Travel is very close to finance and so on, right? So automotive and so on. So I think that this is we are very very diversified. Now, when it comes to the future, looking at the future, which vertical may grow more or may have more margins, uh, we try not to predict. Yeah? And especially I try not to predict. It's difficult to predict the future. It's better to be agile and responsive. I mean, who could have predicted the last 24 months, right? Or 36 months, right? No one could have predicted it. Also, the way we are structured, it's not my decision where we move forward. It's again a decentralized system. I am the designer of the framework, but my senior colleagues are the ones who are out there, driving different verticals, and they decide, what they want to do, right? So it's a slightly different structure and maybe a different answer from what you would get from a more traditional company.
So the strategy to increase margins in the long term to 20% and in the short and mid term to try to close your peers is not related to, okay, I want to go to this kind of verticals. Is more other things. So how do you expect to close the average margin peers?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's a question which is on many people's minds. So just to clarify, we are saying that in the long run, we're not calling this is not guidance. This is not even a target. It's like a dream that we want to be at 30% gross margin and 20% EBITDA margin. So how do we close it? My belief is that almost every client who works with us will pay 5% more if they have to, right? Or if we uh, can convince them to. I won't say if they have to, but I think that no client is worried about us making reasonable margins. And I think in our business, 20% EBITDA is reasonable margin. We saw this in the COVID period, right? Post-COVID period, when we had to go back to our clients and said, look, we have pressure from our employees who want high wages and so on. Please, can we increase our billing rates? Not one client said, no, sorry, this is where we stop. No, everyone was supportive, right? And this is the relationship also we have with our clients, that when they are in trouble, like in 2020, we try to support them. And when we need support, they try to support us. And these are long-term relationships. And as our brand becomes stronger, as our competence in different areas becomes more and more, and there are more and more areas which we already know, we've already built solutions in, and we can more easily, build new solutions for other clients, always without, conflicting with IP and all that. That's always there. But as we get better and better at that, I think our margins increasing them 5% is not that difficult, right? It's not that difficult, and it's not related to choosing the vertical. It's maybe choosing the type of business in the vertical. I mean, just focusing on the high end business, where you're adding more value for high leverage projects.
Okay. Okay. And my last question is related to some companies are sending the message that we are more cautious for 2023 because there are some customers that are reducing the budget. What do you think about 2023? So do you think it's wait and see, or do you think we need more info to decide where we go?
Yeah, so I think we will put out our guidance in a few weeks for 2023. And, it's never easy to predict the future, but we will try our best because we are supposed to by regulations. Uh, but I think everyone will agree that there's a slight cooling in the market. It's not as wild as it was in the uh, past year and a half, 2 years. I think what we will see is more of a reversion to more moderate growth. I think we are definitely seeing at the moment, right? We are seeing 2023 as a growth year, but just how strong will that growth be, we don't know. And we are waiting for our clients to finish their budgeting exercises, and we will have a better idea soon. But it's a very dynamic environment. But the best guess that we can have is that it will be a more moderate growth year. Uh,
Okay. Okay, great. Go with questions first here in the chat. So I show you something that could be in English, and then if you see something in Spanish, I'm going to translate.
sure.
So Retirarse Joven is asking, well, where do you see Nagarro in the next 5 to 10 years?
Thanks for the question. Now this is I'm talking just totally uh, personal. This is not like guidance. This is not a target. We want to double. We want to keep doubling every few years. So we want to be 10x in the next 8 to 10 years. I mean, that's kind of like a goal. So because we went 10x in the last 8 years, we want to 10x in the next eight. And uh, let's see how far we can get. So in terms of the nature of the company, I think the nature of the company needs to sort of go back full circle a bit. I'll just explain that. When we started, we were making software, but the idea was to solve a business problem. So I the software we made in Belgium for Janssen Pharmaceutica was to solve a supply chain problem, which one of the big management consulting companies had tried to solve it and not had failed, and we tried to solve it with not with PowerPoint but with software, and managed to do a good job, right? So now we have become more and more over the years a more software oriented company, but in the last few years we're trying to come back to actually being more focused on solving business problems, right? And using the huge experience we have across the 18,000 people of Nagaro to solve business problems. So that's kind of, I think, what you will see more and more of in the coming years.
Okay. In the second part is asking if you expect to enter to new verticals or maybe new business. Do you expect that?
No, I think that my last part of my answer was just for that, that it's not really new verticals. It's like just being more explicit about solving business problems, right? So you'll see more domain competencies, more solutions within the domains we operate. It is entirely possible that we will also have new domains, but I think there's a lot of different areas which we don't touch today that we will keep improving on and getting better at. That's kind of our goal.
Okay. Also, is asking, do you have some benchmark company, some company that you admire, maybe the CEO, the company, or something? So, any competitor here?
I really admire McKinsey, and I admire it for the reason because when you say McKinsey, and whether you like it or don't like it, people have different reactions. But the beauty of McKinsey is that you can put a team together from all over the world, and they can be young people. But when they go into a client, they are able to add serious value to the client, even if they are young people, because of the whole infrastructure that the company has put up, the framework the company has put up. And I remember, just as an anecdote, I remember going to a Hamburg meeting with one of these big, let me say McKinsey, I say it, it's okay, I guess, to meet a German company. And I was like wondering, I'll be speaking in English, and will it all be in German? And I saw the team that was there, and it was from already 3 4 countries, and that's McKinsey, just the best in the world at that topic, right? That's kind of what one company that I admire. And of course, just like you, I saw at the back, Warren Buffett and stuff. I like that style, being more about substance than about flash. uh, yeah, so yeah, it's just, and I admire a lot of people actually, so it's just different aspects of their work that I would admire.
Okay. So here Ezekiel is about a potential recession. How could impact Nagarro business?
uh, Thanks for the question. I think that it will, uh, we are very close to a recession or in recession in some parts, or not, or it's technical or not technical recession. But I think that it will impact the business. But as I said, I do expect it to continue to be a growth business in 2023. And I think what we're seeing is that there are, of course, segments and sectors like high tech or ISVs that are having to rethink their investment plans. But I think the more traditional sectors who have decided to go on this digitalization, uh, uh, transformation journey, they are not going to stop for a year, because it's so important for their competitiveness, for their long term strategy, long term market share, that they keep moving. So they will be, of course, be more careful. They will not be spending as crazily as they were till recently. But I think it's going to be still a growth sector. So I don't expect, again, I don't want to be, you never know, but I don't expect this to be a degrowth year at all.
Do you think that public sectors or pharma sectors could be more resilient than the other sectors like manufacturing or industrials? Is it reasonable to think like that, right?
Public sector, definitely. Pharma, life sciences, you never know. You never know. But yeah, I mean, there will be some sectors that will be more resilient, I think.
Okay. Filippo Passini is asking, what's the main risk for the sector in the long term?
So, Filippo, that's a very good question, and I will answer it in a way which is a bit unusual. I don't hear this answer very often, but I really believe it is a risk. It's not a huge risk, but it is a risk. Software will become easier and easier to write. It's already a lot easier to write software today than 20 years ago or 10 years ago, even. It will become easier and easier to write. So, when software is very easy to write, what is the future of our industry, right? And I think that the we have seen one aspect of it, that instead of having huge teams working on huge chunks of software work, you have smaller teams working on smaller chunks of software work. And that's why we at Nagaro are really designed around trying to work with small teams. So if you are able to be the same size of company, but with uh, instead of 100 customers, you have 1,000 customers, and you're just like many more projects, like 10x more projects, and you can handle it, then that's a capability that is a special sauce, I think. I try to compare it with Zara. I just love Zara, Inditex, Spanish company.
Hmm?
But this company, it won against the big American retailers by being able to pull off small lot manufacturing, fast turnaround times. When the big American companies were taking 9 months to go from design to in store, Zara was taking 10 days, right? And so it's that kind of, it becomes a competitive advantage if you are able to operate in that much faster, much more fragmented structure, but at scale. And that's kind of what we're trying to do at Nagaro, Filippo.
I understand because I have the opportunity to travel to Galicia to look the Zara installations and logistics because in 2003, 2004, my job was traveling across Spain, visiting the managers with a Spanish company to discuss the strategy. And really, really amazing to visit the logistics center of Zara. It's really amazing. And you know there where is the competitive advantage. So, okay, more questions. Luis Portella says, what's the strengths and the weakness of Nagarro, in your opinion, and which thing do you like to change?
So, Luis, I think the strength is our organizational design and culture. I've talked a lot about it, and I would definitely I stick with that. Our greatest weakness is our brand. No one knows Nagaro. No one knows Nagaro. So we go to clients, and they're like, which company? What do you do?" It's starting to change, right? So we have been, if you go back 3 4 years, we were one fourth of the size, and we were within Algair and not listed, right? And also we had an old logo and no marketing, and so I think we are starting to come out as a company of some scale, and that's one of the weaknesses that we are trying to address. And if I could change one thing about Nagaro, I would change just this the brand recall that we have to work on. And if I would change one thing about the world that would make Nagaro a better company, it's I would just dissolve country borders, right, and have people just work with each other without. But that's not a Nagaro thing. It's a global thing that we have to solve.
Okay, so can I expect in the future the marketing expense could be higher?
Marketing is about ideas. It's also about expense, but it's not about so much about expense. It's more about ideas. I mean, you can always sponsor, some soccer team or something, but that's not probably what we are going to be doing, right? It's just about good ideas. Uh, I think we have some good ideas up our sleeve.
Okay. JKR is asking about why your company is not disclosing some KPIs. You know that I like KPIs. So do you expect to maybe in the future, in the next quarters, to disclose some KPIs?
So there are some things which I want to just explain, right? So uh, we we are in the business of protecting shareholder value, right? So one KPI in particular, the attrition KPI, I think by disclosing it,
Yeah.
you actually make it worse for shareholders, because what happens is that if attrition starts to rise and you are declaring it every quarter, exact numbers, then what happens is that more people start to leave because they feel, because the headlines in the newspapers are, oh, Nagaro is or whatever, Cognizant or whatever is losing people, then everybody starts to leave, right? And it's a very big problem for investors, I think, right? So I personally think it's a kind of KPI sharing it. I'm a shareholder in the company, all my personal wealth is in the company. I don't think it's good for shareholders to be disclosing exact numbers. Now we do say it's high teens. Yeah, I mean, I think that gives everyone an idea. And why should I have to say 17 to 19%, right? If that will drive it to 21%, right? So that's one part, right? Uh, there are other KPIs that don't reflect how we think about the company, right? So you may say utilization, for example, right? Now, I don't look at utilization numbers. I myself don't look at utilization numbers. So, is it appropriate for an investor to look at those numbers? And the reason I say it is because not all companies are designed the same way. We don't work in the same way. So, if, for example, how we segment, how we incentivize, etc., may be different. So, I think when we have gone to share KPIs, it's been trying to share what we are watching. I mean, if we are watching customer satisfaction, we are sharing customer satisfaction. If we are watching whatever the KPIs are, so that's the mindset. And so some of these are uh, things that you don't want to complicate. Like, I'll give you another example, right? So some people ask, what about wage inflation, right? How much was it now? Now, wage inflation varies from country to country. It may even vary from city to city. It varies from young people to old people. It varies from, e-commerce in 2021 was wild to some other thing which is not moving so fast, right? To so there's currency effects. There's all kinds of effects. So it means that we get into more question answers. I mean, you have our numbers, you have our core numbers. You know what's happening, right? So that's more the reason, right? Just not to get into too much explanation about too many things, right? It's too
Okay,
complex, way too complex.
great. Juan Barrios asking something that we talked at the beginning, but I think you could talk about again about that. Is he said, okay, thank you for coming here to this live, because it's really important for us to ask directly to the CEO. So he asking why, when you look your cost of goods sales, and you take and you scale that number with your revenues or something, that number is not much different than EPAM, Global, or Endavan. And Juan Barrio said, but your cost basis is India, and the other companies, they have an expensive cost base, but because they are not in India, maybe they are in Latin America and Europe. So could you explain a little bit here?
See, I don't know the exact working of EPAM or Endava or others. Uh, I just know that the in India, for example, where we have a lot of people in India, we are paying at the top of the market, right? So we are really for most positions, maybe the best paying services company. Of course, there are product companies that may be paying more. The Googles and Amazons may pay more, but you're paying at the top of the market. And it's very, very important for us, coming back to the same point that I mentioned earlier, that when we have 10 people on a team working for Lufthansa or BMW or whatever, wherever these people come from, whether they're from China or India or Sri Lanka or Dubai or wherever, these people have to be really good people, because the leverage for the client from the project is always a lot, right? So they're betting, they may have lined up advertising money, they may have a lot of some event, so it's big, like for example, maybe I shouldn't mention, I can't mention it, but big things lined up for it, right? So I think that uh, our way of looking at margin is not by looking at how cheap do we get people and where and how. It's that as our brand gets better, we will be able to convince more and more clients to pay us a bit more, and that's a relatively easy way. I mean, we are just focused completely on customer satisfaction. Our customers should love us, and they should say, look, if we are on a digitalization journey, this is the partner we want to be with. So that's our mindset. That's how we think internally.
Okay, okay. I'm going to Twitter questions right now because I have two sources of questions, but I think people is enjoying the time. Sir Good Cat is asking how your customers are responding to the increase of inflation and to the increase of prices. So they are accepting the price increase.
Yes, our customers have been very supportive, and that shows in the fact that we have been able to hold on to our margins despite huge price increases. As I said, we have a very symbiotic relationship with our customers. It's a win-win. We win if they win, and sometimes when they are in real trouble, we are happy to help. And when we are in trouble because of the job markets, then they have been very good at helping. So yes, definitely.
Okay. Dan Izquierdos asks, what differs Nagarro from the competitors like Globan, Endava, and these kind of companies?
Yeah, I mean, I first of all, we don't look so much at competitors. Honestly, I think you investors look much more at competitors than we do, because the world is huge. The world is huge. We are just a little small little company in a huge world of opportunity, and the large companies actually like Accenture are everywhere, right? Maybe even EPAM, but we hardly ever run into Endava, etc. I mean, they're still growing companies, right? The world is huge, and even for them, even for us, it's huge opportunity, fast growing segment. But if you had to compare, I would say that our ability to uh, our knowledge in a large variety of domains, and our ability to bring that knowledge collaboratively to our clients in an agile and fast way uh, is something that is very special for us. I mean, we really spend a lot of effort and money developing these competencies. So we are able to bring knowledge from different industries, different verticals, very, very quickly to bear to solve to sort of ideate and think about ways to solve the challenges that our customers are facing.
Okay. Diego de la Torre is thinking that, okay, you are hitting with a high growth rate, but in a case of deceleration recession, so do you think to reduce this hiring?
Hiring is automatically adjusting, right? So we are not a company where I or somebody else takes a decision. We are a company of automation. We are a software company. We are a data company, algorithm company, AI company, automation nudges company. So our hiring is automatically adjusting every single day. I would say every single day, based on what's happening in many different factors, right? Including in projects and many different factors. And yes, as the industry will slow down, I don't think we will hire at that high rate anymore until it comes back up, because we know that after every squeeze in our industry, there's normally a big bounce, and we need to be ready for the bounce also when it comes. So, but at the moment, I think we're waiting for things to play out.
When you talk about automation, is it Ginger in the center of that? Because I read and I listen about Ginger. So why this name? So I'm so curious about that.
Yeah, Ginger is the person who actually built it, or was the team leader. He has a dog called Ginger, a very cute dog, and he named it after his dog. It's a way of thinking about a company which is quite modern, where the company is not the org chart, because we don't even have an org chart. Nagaro doesn't have an org chart. You will not find a single org chart in Nagaro, for example, but it's more about data and how data based nudges are going to different people in the organization based on their roles, based on their context, personalized. And of course, it's built on huge volumes of data, on a data lake and structures. And actually, we use Microsoft's Power Apps. I think that in terms of the use of Power Apps to build this interesting concept, I think we are really far ahead. and we are using this for a lot of our clients as well now. So yeah, there's a lot that we have done with the basis on the basis of that.
Okay, Danny is asking if you can talk about what's your day-to-day work in any day.
Every day is different. Some days are better than others, but see, mostly, i'm not I'm not in the we don't have a typical structure. So there are no review calls, no meet, nothing like that. It's mostly people calling to ask for help, right? I want some help with this topic or with that topic. So that's some of the work. But in the mornings, usually there is a call for the data system, the way we run the company. That's used to be, or I mean traveling last couple of weeks, but mostly that's a regular call, which is how we run the company with data. And then once in a while we have weeks where we focus more on investors, like we have this week, and this conversation.
Okay. Aldea Value is asking two questions. The first one is it possible to increase the buybacks? And the second one is related to M&A. So when you think in an M&A, which goals do you try to reach in terms of verticals and geographic sectors? So do you have in mind what you want to buy?
Great questions. So it is possible to increase the buyback, but we are not. We have no plans for doing that. For us, it was like, the capital markets give us this lever, and it's good to practice it and know how to use it. But it's not necessary for us to use it. This is more of an experiment test case for us. When it comes to M&A, we are typically looking at three things. We're looking at access to clients, access to a technology or a skill set, or access to a region. And I think that technology wise or skill set wise, we are quite well covered today. So it's mostly access to clients and access to a region. But most importantly, we're also looking that to see that the company that's joining us has a culture which is more or less like ours, or can be adapted, and the cultures can come together uh, and enrich each other, right? So I think that's these are the things we look for in M&A, and we are the long run. We will always be acquiring companies, and it'll be a part of our growth for sure.
There are other recurrent company from CV. Sorry, a question from CV is that there are the possibility that in the future you are going to trade in the US. So do you are thinking in a dual listing, or you are thinking just to trade in the US?
No, I just have. I mean, just I put a tweet out. Just I was just a little bit, uh, uh, maybe a bit immature in putting the tweet out, but I think that in terms of our, we have no plans at all, no concrete plans at all for listing in the US. We would say that we keep our eyes open, our mind open at different possibilities, and there are all kinds of possibilities, right? So as you just mentioned, we don't have concrete plans. I mean, we do have analysis that we do ourselves. We even have friends who are always giving us their views, but we don't have concrete plans as of now.
Okay. Here we have a non-financial question from El Inversor Tortuga. He said that you are in the social networks, in Twitter and these kind of things, and you are so active. So Inversor Tortuga is asking why you in the last weeks, in the last quarters, are so active in Twitter. So there are reason, or
Yeah, I think that uh, uh, the world around us has some serious problems, right? I mean, I think the world around us has we have climate change and things like that. In where I live, it's air pollution. It's terrible environmental disaster. You have road safety disasters. You have we lose in India 170,000 people every year to road traffic deaths. You have the war in Ukraine. You have challenges in different countries and different aspects for basic rights. How does a person engage? There's no other way to engage except on social media, right? And it has its downside, but that's the best way you can engage. And try to increase awareness, trying to increase alignment. So that's why I'm on social media. There's no other reason. And yes, of late, maybe a little bit talking a bit more about the company. I see a lot of investors who are also on Twitter. So I feel that I'm boring them by talking about air pollution and this and that. So once in a while, I'll retweet something about the company or a message about the company. But yeah, it's my main reason is on the more social side that brings me to social media.
Here, Manas, there are a funny question that I can search right now, but I remember. So it's from, I think it's Daniel asking about, uh, if you want, if you don't need to ask about that, but if you want, you can. So which car do you have, Manas? Because Daniel is putting an example, some executive from Asia that have a little cheapest car, right? Because you always talk about austerity, and I think that Daniel talks about some Toyota really, really cheap. So I don't know if you want to talk, which one is your car?
I can answer it. You know, my last car was a Honda Civic, but the current car is a Land Rover Discovery Sport, which is the entry level model of Land Rover. And we are a one car family at the moment. We may need a second car. We're trying to avoid it, trying to figure out what to do. So you know, it's about and the decisions for that are like were like, you know, seven-seater, because I have my parents live nearby. We go out together and so on. But yeah, it's not trying to prove a point with either uh, the you know, the size of the car or small or big. But I think the message which I would like to share, which is also something new for me, is that the production of a car, right, is 6 tons of carbon dioxide if it's a small car. It's 18 tons of carbon dioxide if it's a medium-sized car, and it's up to 35 tons of carbon dioxide if it's a big car. And if you think of the budget for carbon dioxide for each of us, it's 2 tons per year by the Paris Agreement. Yeah? So the small car takes 3 years of your budget. The medium-sized car takes 9 years of your budget, and the big car, huge car, takes like 18 years of your budget. So I think that, you know, we all have to rethink. And I'm also still learning. And I just was saw these numbers today. How do you think about your lifestyle? I think there's a lot of thinking that we have to do.
Okay, okay. The last question for my side. So, are you a follower of Warren Buffett, or, for example, in my case, I'm a follower of Peter Lynch, because Peter Lynch tried to contrast all the information with his wife, with his family and friends, go to a shop and ask for the product. So, do you have some, as investor, some benchmark for Guru Investor?
No, I mean, I think that uh, when I read something, I internalize it so much that I even forget who said it. For me, I'd like to just keep reading. And you know, there are lots of great books out there. I mean, there's like, you know, Ben Horowitz, you know, peacetime leader versus wartime leader, and there are all kinds of interesting concepts and ideas. And you know, one investor friend recommended a book on capital allocation, which I thought was very interesting. I read it; it was quite interesting. So I think that, but not any single idol, right? I think hopefully our idols are outside the business world. You know, people who are trying to make a difference in bigger things, perhaps.
Okay, as a way to close, so you talked before that in a few weeks you are going to disclose guidance for 2023. So, um, if you want to close this interview with some message to the people about the company or something like that.
Sure, Kim. We are a very serious company. We are entrepreneurs. My part of the company I started like 26 years ago now, or more, and we have been with the company from, you know, 5 people, 10 people, 100 people, 500,000, 10,000, 20,000, almost. Yeah, and we are operation. At least I'm an operations person. I've worked with, seen very very large, great companies uh, as a consultant in the early years, and our goal is to build like a really fine company, a different company, a fine company. And we're not there yet, but we are working very hard on it. And I think at least you can rely on us that our intent is always good. I mean, whether we do well or not is different, but our intent is good, and our and we're not, and we're reasonably smart. I mean, not totally stupid. I mean, we're not you won't do wild, crazy stuff, right? So I think as investors, you have lots of opportunities to invest in different companies, and really you should look at all of them. I can just say that we are a pretty strong, serious company.
Okay. Okay, Manas, thank you for accepting my invitation to come here, because not always it's easy to convince CEOs to come here to talk, but this is the idea. So thank you. Thank you for your humility. Thank you because you are really transparent, and this is the kind of CEOs that people like to invest. So you are invited in the future to come here again to talk about results or something. So many thanks for your time, and see you next time.
Thank you, and thanks to everyone, and also for not asking very difficult questions. So. Thank you. Thanks.
Bye. Bueno, espero que os haya gustado la entrevista. Ya dije que era una entrevista para vosotros. He tratado durante pues casi 45 minutos trasladar todas vuestras preguntas, tanto en el chat como las preguntas de Twitter, a Manas. Yo creo que este es el único canal que os permite contactar y preguntar directamente a los CEOs. Espero que valoréis esto. Lo seguiremos haciendo. Hemos entrevistado ya 5 o 6 CEOs. El siguiente será el CFO de Paysign, una compañía muy interesante que está en un momento espectacular por todo lo que está sucediendo a nivel macroeconómico en Estados Unidos. Tendremos al director financiero, Jeff Baker. Después también tendremos al director comercial de España y Portugal de XPEL. Por tanto, va a ser una oportunidad increíble para conocer con mucho detalle el producto de XPEL. Eso va a ser una avanzadilla antes de traer a Ryan Pape al canal. Ya os avanzo que no está siendo fácil, pero lo traeremos. Y tenemos más CEOs en cartera para traer. Probablemente vendrá Linda Zarbi, que es la CEO de KRMD, una compañía muy interesante de dispositivos médicos, ¿vale? Por tanto, este canal os seguirá trayendo CEOs de compañías interesantes siempre, CEOs americanos, del Reino Unido, nórdicos. Estoy contactando con Exatronic también para traer al CEO de Exatronic. Creo que aporta valor y, sobre todo, estas entrevistas no es para que yo hable con el CEO porque yo ya he hablado con él, sino es para que vosotros les podáis preguntar pues a través del chat, a través de Twitter, y se lo pregunto yo porque soy consciente de que el inversor particular no tiene acceso a los CEOs. Por tanto, Invertir como Profesional Draco TV quiere ayudar a que el CEO pueda llegar al inversor particular. Por tanto, no sé si alguien quiere comentar alguna cosa. Yo creo que la entrevista ha estado bien. No quería yo extenderme en mis preguntas. Repito, quería que fuerais vosotros los que llevarais un poco pues el tono y la trayectoria de la entrevista. Yo creo que ha estado bien. Han sido muchas preguntas. Es interesante que en pocas semanas pues, nos va a actualizar el guidance para el 2023. Probablemente es opinión mía. Aquí Álvaro pregunta cuál ha sido mi impresión. Mi impresión es buena, me parece una compañía interesante, es decir, es verdad que en el sector de IT hay compañías interesantes. Las únicas cosas que me gustaría ver más en detalle, pasa que pues, la compañía no desglosa toda la información, es que cuando estás en una fase de crecimiento de personal, de empleados muy alta, yo creo que también hay que tener en cuenta el ciclo económico en el que estamos, el momento en el que estamos, ¿no? Entonces, está un poco por ver, que estoy expectante a ver esas expectativas, ese nuevo guidance para el año 2023 en cuanto a crecimiento y en cuanto a tasa de captación de profesionales, porque si no me equivoco, y lo voy a ver en el modelo, Nagarro está actualmente en unos, a cierre del 3Q22, en unos 17.000 profesionales del segmento de ingeniería. En total son unos 18.000. Pero evidentemente este ritmo de crecimiento, pues igual se tiene que ralentizar, ¿no? En todo caso, es una compañía que evidentemente pues, genera interés, es interesante, sé que gusta mucho en redes sociales, tiene crecimiento, está en un sector que debería ser más resiliente a la futura recesión. Eso también dependerá de los verticales que tengan cada uno, ¿vale? Pero como siempre, bueno, a mí me gusta ir viendo sobre los números y ya sabéis que a mí me gusta tener en cuenta en qué entorno macro nos movemos a la hora de valorar una compañía, ¿no? Es decir, y por tanto yo creo que respondiendo a Álvaro, pues será interesante ver ese update de guidance que vaya a realizar Nagarro en las próximas semanas relativo al año 2023. Si uno quiere hacerse una idea, únicamente tiene que ver qué están diciendo las compañías comparables. Lo comentamos en la tesis de inversión de Nagarro, pusimos el outlook trimestral del cuarto trimestre del 2023 de compañías como EPAM, Endava, Globan, y todas ellas, aunque seguían positivas a grandes rasgos sobre el año 2023, sí que estaban reduciendo algo las expectativas. Por tanto, yo creo que Nagarro pues, va a hacer algo parecido, ¿no? Evidentemente, esto no es alarmante ni mucho menos, ¿vale? Porque al final yo creo que es evidente que la economía entra en una recesión, que será consecuencia de la subida de los tipos de interés y, en mi opinión, pero es únicamente mi opinión y evidentemente no es una recomendación, yo creo que será una recesión suave y que en ningún caso, al menos con la información que tenemos hoy, uno puede esperar que la recesión sea dura o sea profunda, ¿no? Por tanto, como siempre, oportunidades. Daniel aquí dando las gracias. Gracias a vosotros. Sin vosotros este canal pues no sería posible. Ya sabéis que la idea del canal es subir contenido de calidad, contenido de valor añadido. Creo que está gustando las iniciativas que vamos haciendo. Entrevistar a CEOs, realizar tesis mucho más allá de los números del consenso, sino realizar tesis con nuestros propios números a través de datos KPI que nos ayudan a proyectar el crecimiento de ventas y la segmentación de los costes. Por tanto, gracias a vosotros para estar aquí presentes. Creo que no me he dejado ninguna pregunta y si no he puesto en pantalla, no he respondido a alguna pregunta, es porque ya se había dicho antes o era recurrente. Iñaki, gracias a ti por estar aquí. La hora no era la mejor porque al final una entrevista a las 2:30, pues la gente pues, está comiendo. Es difícil, evidentemente siempre mejor a la tarde. Román, gracias también por comentar. Por tanto, recordar, lo siguiente vendrá el martes, donde haremos un directo para explicar, aunque ya lo comenté un poco en la tesis de Nagarro, yo creo que los múltiplos de valoración no se están utilizando de forma correcta en las redes sociales. Por tanto, vamos a hacer un directo exclusivo únicamente para hablar, siempre, evidentemente es mi opinión, no tenéis por qué estar de acuerdo, pero os doy mi opinión porque como llevo más de 20 años pues, gestionando y analizando compañías, ya he dicho que mi trabajo en el 2003-2005 era viajar por España analizando compañías, hablando con los managers, con los directivos de compañías españolas interesantes en ese momento. Es decir, yo siempre he hablado con los managers de las compañías, forma parte de mi proceso de inversión, no entiendo el análisis de una empresa principalmente pequeña, evidentemente. Si yo estoy analizando Amazon o si yo gestiono un fondo o tengo una cartera como inversor particular de grandes compañías, pues no voy a hablar con las compañías. Pero si yo gestiono una compañía de micro, small caps, es crucial tener ese contacto con el management porque muchas veces la única información que existe, acordaros de ejemplos como Hansa Holding, Water Intelligence, Exatronic hace poco, todas estas compañías hace un año no tenían cobertura de analistas y ahora tienen 1 o 2 analistas. Por tanto, si tú no eres capaz de hablar con la compañía para extraer información, no vas a encontrar información porque tú vas al buscador de Google escribes Water Intelligence y no encuentras nada. De hecho, lo que vais a encontrar probablemente es pues el informe que escribí yo o el que también ha escrito, que estaba muy bien. Desde aquí lo felicito a Adrià por el informe de Water Intelligence. Entonces, si tú eres capaz de hacer un estudio de una compañía que puede ser compounder interesante, ese esfuerzo de hablar con la compañía es único porque esa información solo la tienes tú. Si encima vas más allá y lo que haces es contrastar la información, como siempre digo, el estilo Peter Lynch, y en este canal no lo decimos, sino que lo hacemos porque os lo traemos y os lo enseñamos en directo, yo creo que es la forma de entender y tener más convicción en las compañías pequeñas, en small y microcaps. Ese es el core de lo que yo he hecho siempre. Repito, llevo más de 22 años en esto. Siempre lo he hecho de esta manera y no sabría hacerlo de otra manera. Por tanto, me es difícil, aunque evidentemente yo respeto todos los estilos, pero me es difícil invertir en compañías pequeñas. Hablo como inversor profesional, no como inversor particular, sin ese contacto con la compañía, con sus proveedores, con sus competidores, con sus clientes para sacar más información. En el approach, por ejemplo, en el caso de XPEL, aparte de hablar con la compañía, pues es muy interesante hablar con sus empleados, ir a un instalador para que te explique por qué utiliza el producto de XPEL y no utiliza el producto de Eastern Chemical o 3M. Pues eso se puede hacer con cualquier compañía. Vosotros como particulares también podéis ir a una tienda, podéis probar un producto, probar un servicio y ver un poco cuál es vuestro feedback como cliente. Eso es muy importante. Por tanto, os seguiremos trayendo CEOs al canal. Repito, el próximo será Jeff Baker de Paysign y después probablemente vendrá pues, gente del equipo de XPEL, gente del equipo de KRMD y estoy también ya hablando con diferentes compañías royalties para traeros pues, aquí su CEO. Por tanto, voy a ser bastante activo en esta faceta porque creo que aporta mucho valor y también porque digamos, utilizo pues toda esa red de contactos que yo he generado durante 20 años hablando con diferentes compañías en diferentes países, excepto en Japón, donde es imposible hablar con los directores generales, razón por la cual pues yo nunca hablo de invertir en Japón. Y también, si es interesante, evidentemente os traeremos CEOs de España. He intentado hablar con Grifols, pero es una compañía difícil, la cual no le gusta mucho hacer este tipo de eventos, pero bueno, voy a tratar de ver si podemos hacer algo. Y evidentemente seguiremos haciendo, pues hablando de red flags contables. Quiero recordar que este fue el primer canal que empezó a hablar de red flags contables. Tenéis un curso que lo habéis visto en pantalla, que es el curso 10K. Es un curso que está generando muchísimo interés. Se han matriculado ya muchos alumnos. Un curso que tienes más de 20 horas de clases. Tienes un manual también para consulta de más de 700 páginas. Os puedo garantizar que esto es un curso exclusivo y os aseguro que no hay un curso igual, al menos en lengua española. Es decir, si queréis entender la herramienta principal de un inversor en acciones, que es el formulario 10K, el informe anual, lo que no podéis hacer es tratar de invertir, sobre todo en compañías pequeñas y medianas, sin entender toda la información, tanto financiera y contable y también cualitativa, que aparece en un informe 10K. Por tanto, al ver que no existía un curso que te explicara toda la información de un 10K, desde la información del proxy statement, desde cómo leer un informe de auditoría, desde cómo leer las notas a la memoria, cómo entenderlas, cómo detectar oportunidades a través del informe 10K, cómo detectar, sobre todo, riesgos para evitar una pérdida permanente de capital. Con ese enfoque nació este curso, que repito que es uno de los 5 bloques del curso avanzado, el cual estamos realizando ahora. Justo ayer entramos ya en la parte de evaluación sectorial. Ayer explicamos el sector financiero con, yo creo que una gran descripción de cómo valorar un banco, tanto retail como un banco de inversión. Les enseñamos a los alumnos a calcular un modelo que evidentemente no es una valoración por múltiples, sino es un modelo de precio-valor objetivo ajustando el net asset value del banco en función de diferentes cosas, ¿vale? Es decir, yo creo que los alumnos están muy, muy contentos. Por tanto, os invito a que si queréis subir vuestro nivel de análisis, si queréis mejorar el éxito en vuestras inversiones, tenéis este curso disponible. Encima ahora tenéis un descuento activado de 25 euros con el código descuento directo, ¿vale? En la descripción de este vídeo tendréis toda la información. Bueno, sin más, no sé si hay alguna pregunta más, pero me retiro, que aún no he comido. Vamos a comer y os emplazo el próximo martes, donde vamos a hablar de cómo utilizar los múltiplos para valorar. También no lo he dicho, haré un directo o un vídeo grabado, ya veremos, yo creo que es un directo donde vamos a actualizar la valoración de Grifols y vamos a ver por qué en Grifols sí que hay que valorarla a través de un descuento en flujos de caja. Grifols es una compañía que no permite, si quieres hacer un buen análisis, no puedes valorarla por múltiplos, tienes que hacer un descuento en flujos de caja. Veremos por qué es interesante en una compañía hacer un descuento en flujos de caja y en otra hacer una valoración por múltiplos. Y evidentemente siempre abierto a propuestas. Me podéis enviar, podéis contactarme por Twitter, por YouTube, a través de WhatsApp, a través de la página web. Estoy abierto a recibir propuestas para hacer directos que os puedan encajar, que os puedan gustar, ¿vale? Siempre abierto a tratar de subir contenido diferente, contenido siempre que aporte valor añadido. Muy bien, sin más, me despido. Suscribiros al canal si no estáis suscritos, compartir este contenido en vuestras redes sociales, la mejor forma que podéis ayudar a este canal a crecer. Si ayudáis a este canal a crecer, vais a permitir que yo pueda contactar con más CEOs, con más directores generales de compañías interesantes, estén incentivados a venir al canal, porque de esta forma pues yo puedo hacer que esa entrevista tenga mayor visualización. También os comunico que la próxima semana estoy en un concurso en Estados Unidos a través de Microcap, de una web de Robert Kraft, donde hace entrevistas, una web que os recomiendo, hace entrevistas a CEOs en Estados Unidos, compañías principalmente americanas. Ha organizado un concurso de hacer un pitch, es decir, explicar una tesis de inversión en 10-20 minutos, y lo ha hecho de forma geográfica. Ha organizado varios equipos a nivel mundial, por ejemplo, el equipo americano, el equipo europeo, el equipo asiático, el equipo japonés, etcétera. y a mí, a través de Mash, me han incorporado, formo parte del equipo americano, por tanto, durante 20 minutos estaré hablando de una tesis de inversión y después habrá un turno de preguntas y respuestas. Yo creo que se podrá ver en directo, por tanto, os invito a todos que, aunque será en inglés, pero os invito a todos a que lo hagáis. No recuerdo la web de memoria. Sí, bueno, os lo voy a decir. Dejadme mirarlo en Google. Y os lo digo porque es... a ver, un momento. Microcap. A ver si lo veo. Planet Microcap, ¿vale? La web se llama Planet Microcap. Entonces, gracias a Robert por invitarme, porque no es fácil participar. Ya sabéis que yo llevo muchos años participando en foros privados con inversores de hedge funds americanos y ahí es de donde saco la mayoría de mis ideas. No es que, aunque tengo screens, la mayoría de las ideas salen pues de participar en esos foros donde he conocido gente extraordinaria, desde Mash hasta Conor Halley, gente con un nivel espectacular, evidentemente, de los que se aprenden muchas cosas. Por tanto, os invito a la programación de todo lo que vamos a hacer. Vamos a estar muy activos tanto este mes de noviembre como el mes de diciembre, ¿vale? Es decir, voy a tratar de aportar más contenido de lo habitual durante estos próximos 2 meses. Por tanto, me despido. Espero que os haya gustado la entrevista, compartirla y buenas tardes a todos. Un saludo. Nos vemos. Hasta luego.